Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Rad Conversations. This week we have Sarah with us, and she's going to share the ultimate story of good versus evil, when God and the devil fought over her soul. All that and more coming up on this episode of Rad Conversations. And remember, if you enjoy the show, please like, comment, and share. All right, let's hear Sarah's story. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. Could you share with our audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Sarah Minzor. I am a recent transplant to Texas. I moved here about a year ago. I owned a kids center in California, which I closed and sold to come here. It's a kids sports, gymnastics, cheerleading, after school programs. I live here in Texas with, I take care of my parents. I live with my husband 10 years, and I live with one of my 4 kids. The rest of them are still in California. We're hoping to get them here soon. And I'm just enjoying life, not having to work while I'm here. And
that's the idea, right? To enjoy life and worry about work later. You did share with me a story off air, something that happened in one of your dreams. Did that happen here in Texas, or was this back in California?
It was in California. Could
you share with us the story?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2015, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. I was told that, this was a kind of an elderly person disease. It wasn't something that people get when they're 42. And the prognosis is not good. They caught it quite by accident. I went to the hospital thinking I was having a gallbladder issue, and they did a scan and said, hey, your gallbladder's fine, but you have this thing on your ovary. So tests and surgeries and all this stuff, I found out it was cancer. I immediately was supposed to go to a surgeon's appointment straight from the appointment that I found out I had cancer at. And my mom said, no, we're going to go to our church first, and we're going to meet with our pastor first. And I said, okay. Don't really remember a lot of that. I was kind of in a daze. So we got in the car, we went straight to the church, and my pastor just looked at me and said, you're going to be fine. And he came over and grabbed my hands to pray for me. And at that point, I just felt, warm all over my body. And at that point, I didn't fear anymore. The fear left my body. And there were some times when, things were a little scary and getting news that you didn't want to hear, having to go through procedures. But at that point, I knew I was going to be okay. There was no question. And so I had to do some chemo after that and have some surgeries. And it was a pretty long road. But this happened to me about a month into chemo, when I was frail and sick and bald and laying in bed one night. I was in that place between sleep and awake, where you don't quite know if you're awake and you don't quite know if you're asleep. And everything was quiet. Everyone was in bed. My husband was sleeping already. And I just heard and felt the presence of the devil. And I knew it was him. I clearly had never seen him before, but there was no doubt in my soul that the devil was fighting for me at that point. I felt him right over my face, and I could smell it. It smelled horrible. The hair on the back of my neck was standing up. And I just felt this huge pressure on my body pushing me down into the bed.
What did he look like, and what did he smell like?
The only thing that I could relate it to maybe was smelling like something was dead. And all I could see was a shadow. It was dark in my room. And I don't really know, to be honest with you, if I opened my eyes and physically saw it, or if I, saw it through my spirit. I don't know. It was dark and I was trying to sleep. But I saw a silhouette, and I smelled it, felt the pressure, and just an overwhelming sense of fear. If you've ever felt fear or regret or just trauma, imagine all of those together, all in your soul at the same time with the big, knot in your throat. And then the pressure, it was almost like somebody had gotten on top of me and was just pushing me into the bed. And it was hard to breathe, and I couldn't move. And he started to talk to me. He was telling me everything that I'd done wrong in my life, and going back years, things that you wouldn't even think,
Wow.
You would remember, or things maybe I remember one specifically was something that I said to somebody when I was in my 20s. And it probably wasn't the nicest thing to say, but it wasn't something that, 20 years later, that person would even remember, And he just started dredging up all this stuff from my past and telling me, why did I feel like that I should live? A lot of people die from cancer, and why do I feel like I'm better than anyone that I would be able to live, and why do I deserve it? You don't deserve it. Look at what you did. You did this and this and this.
So he brought up all these instances that happened in the past to you. Can you share like one small thing that you just can't believe he brought up? And did he bring up like 100 different examples, or just like the top 3, or was it everything?
There were a lot. I would say at least 50 things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the biggest one was that in about 2002 or 2003, I had a miscarriage at 3 months. And I had been having, some spotting and some cramping and stuff a couple of days leading up to that miscarriage. And he blamed me. He said, you knew, that you knew that you were having issues, and you didn't go to the doctor, and you didn't go to the hospital, and you didn't call. And it's your fault that happened. And, if you would have just, gone to the hospital or whatever, you could have stopped it from happening, and telling me that I was like an evil person. Yeah.
And how long did this go on for? And when he's talking to you, he's laying on top of you. Can you feel his breath? Or, when you're talking to someone close, you can kind of tell if they're like 3 inches from you, or they're,
That's what smelled.
Oh, you smelled his breath.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
wow.
That was the part that was smelling. And yeah, he was just in my face, almost like, you're having an argument with somebody and you see people get heated and they're right up in each other's faces and spit flying and all that stuff, is exactly what it felt like. And I don't know, I don't feel like that there was time. I know it sounds weird. There were like 50 things that happened, but it could have all happened in 10 seconds, and it could have been over the course of an hour or two. I really don't know. It didn't feel like there was time.
That's what you hear about, is like in the afterlife. Not that you were in the afterlife, but there's no such thing as time. Time is a man-made thing. So everything can happen all at once, and you can take it all in. So it kind of sounds like you were in that realm. Once again, it could have been an hour. It could have been half a split second that you were talking to the devil. It sounded like you had sleep paralysis there. Have you had that in the past?
Never.
Well, that's a hell of a way to get into it.
Right.
Like that's
right. It was definitely, I do have a little bit of, claustrophobia, fear of being enclosed and not being able to move and stuff. And I had that before. And so it was very scary, not to be able to just sit up and move, or go somewhere else, or, get away. But I couldn't.
And was your husband right next to you when this was all going on?
Mm-hmm. He never woke up.
He never woke up, and he never I had a bad dream last night or anything like that.
No.
Oh, wow. Okay. Please continue.
Well, so he's, going after me and really just challenging, my worth and whether I deserve to live through this. And I really believe that he wanted my soul. I believe that he didn't want me to survive this. And I believe that, he was trying to convince me to give up, or, convince me that I wasn't worthy. And so, pause this story and back a couple of months from this, a cousin of mine had died of breast cancer. She was older, a little bit older. She's my mom's cousin, but mine. And someone had put together this video montage, photo montage as a tribute, and put a song attached to it and put it on Facebook. And I had been watching it a couple of days before this happened. And the song that they put on it, I can't even really remember what song it was. I had never heard it before. And it was talking about God's forgiveness, and, that she's going to be in heaven after this, and reuniting with Jesus, after a life well lived. And I just remember that being like the theme of the song. And I thought it was cool. And I watched the video and I looked at pictures and, kind of watched the memorial of her. Never heard the song before. Have never heard it since. Actually, I went back after this and watched it. But all of a sudden, in my left ear, I start hearing this song.
Oh, wow.
And I knew every word to the song. I could hear every single word to the song, even though I'd only heard it that one time. and I, didn't know it before that. I could hear every word to the song, and I'm guessing my brain knew the song because where else would this be coming from, right? And the devil's here in my face, screaming at me, telling me that I'm not worth anything, and this song is playing in my ear, and I could understand them both simultaneously. I could hear every word that was being said in the song, and I could hear every word that he was saying, like I was having two conversations at different points and then merged them together, which was bizarre.
Growing up, were you guys a very religious family? I mean, your mom
Yeah.
took. Yes. Okay. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I come from like six generations or seven generations of pastors. And yeah, and I don't remember not being in church. And so my faith is strong. And I know that when I pass, I'm going to heaven. And I know that God has healed my body more than one time, when I could have died, but so it didn't surprise me. But at this, I know that the devil exists, and I know that, he wants to kill, steal, and destroy. And it doesn't surprise me that he would do all of this, but I never expected it to be such a real life situation, like something so real that I felt like if I could reach out that I could touch it.
So.
So,
So, has any of your other family members had this interaction before? This type of interaction?
um, not like this, but I do recall, and I never thought of this until you asked the question. When I was younger, my parents separated for a bit, and I know my brother, who's 5 years older than me, had a dream, like a vision dream, about a sword that the tip had broken off, and then or the yeah, the sword had a tip broken off in a fight with a dragon or something. I don't remember the details. And then the sword went through the dragon and killed the dragon, and it came out with the tip back on. And that happened when my mom and dad were separated. And then my mom and dad ended up back together and are still together now and have been married for over 60 some years.
Oh, wow.
So I know that, now I've known of other people having like visions and dreams and stuff like that, but um, I almost feel like this. I mean, it could have been a dream. I don't know quite if I was awake or asleep or a combination of both, but I feel like this is kind of more of an experience than a dream, but kind of
Yeah,
in the same realm.
for sure. Sure. Yeah. No, it sounds pretty intense. So,
Yeah.
and it slightly sounds like you had a near-death experience. Just when you had your life, it wasn't a life review, but you hear about in a life review, in a near-death experience where all the bad things and all the good things get relayed back to the person, but they can take it all in at one time and understand everything. And so it sounds like you had a similar thing there, just on the negative side. But how long would just with the devil uh, screaming at you? So he was screaming at you. I mean, like a human would scream, or what was it?
It sounded like the loudest thing I've ever heard and the quietest thing I've ever heard at the same time.
Oh wow, that's wow,
Yeah. I don't
that's
know how to explain it. It's just, it was almost like it wasn't being heard through my ears. It was being heard on the inside of my body. And so it was loud and scary, but at the same time, you could feel yourself on the outside and the room was still.
wow.
I don't know if you never experienced, I mean, I have a hard time explaining it, even though I was there.
I know. I totally understand. Totally understand that you can't put into words what you went through for sure, because who has gone through it? Um, but please continue, not to cut
Okay.
you off.
Yeah, no, no. So I have got this song playing in my left ear, and I've got the devil in front of me, telling me all these things. And then on the right side, I start hearing a voice. And at first I couldn't quite make it out and I didn't know what it was. But as it got closer, I realized someone was praying for me. And I could hear them saying, please cover Sarah with your blood, she needs healing, please intervene. And I could hear them interceding for me. And it started getting louder and louder and louder. And again, now I can hear the devil and I can hear every word he's saying. I can hear this song and I know every word and I can hear every word it's saying. And now I've got this third voice on my right side and I can hear and understand all of it at the same time as if they were separate conversations. And as the voice got louder, I realized that it was my pastor's wife. Her name is Jackie. She's a fabulous woman. And I knew that she was kneeling on the right side of my bed praying for me. And so I'm listening to her pray for me, and it's getting louder and louder. I'm listening to this song, and it's getting louder and louder. And I'm listening to the devil speak to my soul, and it's getting quieter and quieter. And these two on the sides just got so loud that I couldn't start to make out, what was happening in front of me. And all of a sudden they just like exploded. I hear amen on this side, and I just feel like the devil just was sucked.
Oh, wow.
The room. And it was just done. It was like this big whoosh, and all of the pressure came off of my chest. All of the fear left my body. The smell went away, and it was just, all I could hear was just amen. And everything went quiet. And when I tell you, I have never felt peace like in that moment. Like everything was right with my body. Everything was right with my soul. There was no anxiety. There was no pain. There was no nausea from the chemo. There was no, headache from the chemo. There was nothing. And I rolled over, and I looked at the clock, and I looked around the room, and nothing was there. And I turned over and I slept. And when I say I slept, the hardest that I had slept the entire time that I'd been going through this. And it wasn't like I, woke up and thought about it again, or any, tossed and turned or anything. I slept. That was it. So
that was going to be my next question. It's like, did you ever go back to sleep? I mean, obviously you had to, but I didn't know if you try to stay up the next couple of days without.
Right away.
Right away, you were
right away. I looked at the clock. I made sure no one was kneeling next to my bed. I noted the time. It was 2:31 in the morning, and I turned over and went back to sleep and slept like a baby.
You grew up in a religious family. Why do you think that it was your preacher's wife, of all the people? Why do you think she was the one that you heard and?
Because she was praying for me. I went to church this was on a Tuesday. I went to church on Sunday, and it was still, heavy on my heart. And I was thinking about it a lot, because who does this happen to? And so after church happened, I went over and I said, hey, I just want to say thank you for praying. I get emotional every time I think about this. I just want to thank you for praying for me, and she said, oh, of course, Sarah, I love you. I know what you're going through. I'm so sorry that you're dealing with. And I said, no, I want to thank you for praying for me at 2:30 in the morning on Tuesday. And she said, how did you know? And I said, because I heard you. And she said, something just told me, pray for Sarah right now. So she said she got down on the right side of her bed, and she prayed for me, and I heard it. I mean, she lived in the same town as me, but not anywhere near me that I would hear it. But she got on her knees at that moment when God told her to, and prayed for me, and that's what I heard. And I heard every word of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So never again have I gotten a feeling that I should pray for someone and not done it immediately right then, because I don't know if that story would have been different had she not. I mean, I don't know. I know that God's had me ever since, I got that diagnosis, and I went to that meeting with my pastor. I knew I was going to be okay, but, definitely God used her in that instance to save me from whatever it was that the devil had planned for me.
Now, did she get an extra big Christmas present that year?
Oh my God, she got so many hugs.
I was going to say, how do you not, I mean, every time you saw her again, did that whole feeling come back every time?
Every time. Every time I see her, every time I talk to her, I just, I can't believe it happened, and I can't believe I heard it. And she's a great woman of God, and probably prays for everybody, and probably didn't do anything different for me than she does for everyone else. But in that moment, it felt bigger.
Amazing. And when you've prayed for people, how often does that come up to where you're like, I think Johnny needs an extra prayer today? Or does that hit you every so often, or do you just?
Yeah. I have a couple of stories that probably would take too long, but I do, like, you'll see somebody on social media or, that's going through something, or especially when I see people that are going through cancer or things that I've gone through, it'll hit me extra hard in the heart. And I'll feel like God's telling me, pray for this person. Or when people ask for prayer, clearly they're going through something enough that they feel like they need to ask, but there's been times, I have a when I owned my gym in California, we would see about 500 kids a week. And I coached competitive cheerleading, and I would tell people that I love cheerleading, but it's not about this, right? It's about the kids. And I've raised probably half a dozen or more kids who didn't belong to me or that I didn't give birth to. And I would tell people, like, when they come into my gym, there's this light that shines on them that I know that those are the ones. Some kids, I needed some kids to run the business, but some kids came there because they needed me. And I would know when they walked in who they were. God just tells you. And those would be the kids that, would show up at my door and say, hey, my mom's on drugs and my dad's in jail. Can I live with you? And I would open my door and say, I have a couch, but, you're welcome to it.
Wow. So you're saying that when they literally walk through the door, they had an aura around them, or after you talked to them, you understood that they need.
After you talk to them, I mean, pretty much right away, you could tell, who the families were, what they were going through, what they were dealing with, what the kids needed, what kind of mentorships, that they could benefit from. And I had this gym where I could do exactly that through multiple different sports. And I would find out, hey, this kid's lived through foster care, or this kid, his parents are addicted, or, this kid is, just has some behavior stuff that he needs to work through. Lots of abuse, lots of, things. And these kids would come in and, immediately come to me and say, hey, this is what's going on in my life. And so everyone was different. I didn't need to raise them all. Some of them I did. Some of them showed up and needed a family, and that's what we were. But some of them just needed love, and some of them just needed extra attention and structure and different things. And so over the years, I was able to give them what they needed. But I think that's part of the reason why the devil was so upset with me. I think he knew that I was affecting lives, and I'm definitely a pro-lifer, and I can say that there's at least 5 babies walking this earth today because their parents came to me first before they went to the world or to Planned Parenthood or anywhere else. And so I know that was my, kind of my mission field and the way that I could help. And I know that, the devil probably wasn't real happy with that and would have preferred that I ended that in 2015, but here I am.
That was going to be my next question. Why do you think the devil came for you? And you just explained it. Do you feel like if the preacher's wife hadn't prayed for you, what do you think the outcome would have been?
I mean, I knew when I met with my pastor prior to my treatments, I felt like I was healed in that meeting, or at least given a reassurance that I was going to be okay. So I don't think that the devil has any authority to take that away. So I don't think necessarily that I would have been any worse off. But I do think he was trying to crush my spirit. I do think he was trying to convince me that I wasn't going to go through it, so that maybe that I would be afraid, or maybe that I wouldn't follow through with the treatments that were hard or whatever. I don't really know.
Right.
But I do, but I'm grateful that she was there,
I got to go back to his breath, because that's the first time I ever heard the devil's breath. What's the closest thing you've smelled since then that's come close to the smell of the devil's breath?
Maybe something burnt, something rotten. Yeah.
Well, that tracks. Yeah.
Yeah. Rotten food, something burnt. I mean, I've never smelled death, but I've heard people describe it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was it. That was what it smells like. Imagine the 3 worst things that you smelled and put them together. But yeah, and it was just this I don't know, you can't smell anger, but if you could,
yeah,
that's what I would say.
I know, yeah. Just describe. Yeah, no, I mean, I hear what you're saying. You can't describe it.
I can tell you it's something that I never want to smell again.
Amen, sister. Amen. Yeah. I mean, do you focus on just like happy stuff from then on out, or like if you see a horror movie, are you ever watching a horror movie or anything like that, or do you kind of block all that out and
Yeah,
just kind of?
I don't. I mean, I believe the devil. I mean, how can you not believe that the devil is real, right? And if the devil is real, God is real, right? And not that I would have before, but I now can never deny the existence of either. And I even prior to this, I don't mind a scary movie, but I don't like scary movies that have like demons and devils and that kind of thing in it because I think they're real. The ghost thing, that doesn't bother me. The, Pennywise the clown stuff, I don't like it, but it doesn't bother me. Um,
Have you
that
heard?
stuff, but I know that other stuff is real, so I try to steer clear.
Have you told the story a lot to people? And has anybody else said, "Oh my God, same thing happened to me," or
I've
similar?
probably, oddly enough, it was 10 years ago, 10 years ago. Wow. And I've probably only told the story maybe half a dozen times. And I don't really like to revisit it, but at the same time, it has a happy ending. So it does just kind of make me awe God and what he can do and, how he transcends time and space and, all of that stuff. But I've only told it a couple of times and only when it comes up in a conversation where it's relevant. It's not something that I just, bring up in random conversation because I think people would, think I was a little weird or maybe it would be off putting to some.
And thank you for coming on to share it here. But it's just amazing the more you put this out, and I put this on a Facebook feed, and that's how we connected. So thank you for. But I had on the Facebook feed, I probably had 25 people reach out to me and like, oh, I had this crazy experience. I had this crazy experience. But when it got down to, hey, can you come on the podcast and talk about it? It went down to you, Sarah. You were the only one that followed through. I had a lot of people right up to the edge that were like, yeah, I'll come on and share my story. And then for whatever reason, they had to back out at the last second. So I really appreciate you following through with this. Thanks for watching the show today, folks. And if you enjoyed it, please like, comment, and share. And like always, stay rad.